Hi, welcome to the second episode of My Life, My Choice. My name is Ashley Kim, and I'm the National Coordinator of Together for Choice. Together for Choice is a national grassroots organization which advocates for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, their families, and the service providers. We believe people with disabilities and their families should have the right to choose where, how, and with whom they live, work, and receive services. The disabilities community is very diverse with a wide range of needs and preferences. The purpose of our video series is to demonstrate this diversity by having members of our community share their real-life stories and experiences. Today, we're going to talk about the reality of adult autism. I'm joined by Jill Escher, who wears many hats in the autism world. She's an autism research philanthropist and funds cutting-edge research through the Escher Fund for Autism. She is president of the National Council on Severe Autism and immediate past president of Autism Society San Francisco Bay Area. She is also a housing provider to adults with developmental disabilities through her business, Clarendon Properties, LLC. And most importantly, she is the mother of two children with nonverbal forms of autism, Sophie and Johnny. Hi, welcome, Jill.
Hey, Ashley.
Well, so let's talk about adult autism.
Yes.
Right? So children with autism are growing up now. And what is the reality of adult autism?
Well, I think there are two things everybody really needs to know. And one is the absolutely staggering, dramatic increase in the number of children diagnosed with autism over the past 30 years. And as you said, those children are aging into adulthood now in droves. Unfortunately, there has percolated a very pernicious and false narrative that this increase in autism is attributable to diagnostic changes or to broadening criteria or to greater awareness, There's really no evidence for that in the United States. There's actually very scant evidence outside of the United States, but especially here. What we see is an abundance of evidence that this is a very real increase in very serious mental disability, very serious permanently functional disability. And what has happened, I think, is that rather than grappling with the actual data that we see coming from the schools, that we see coming from the developmental disability programs, that we're even seeing in like the Social Security rolls now for the people applying for benefits, for example, is these consistent increases, almost exponential over time. Instead of dealing with that data, what we see in academia and especially in the media is a dismissal of all of this. So let me give you an example. When I graduated from college in the late 1980s, California counted about 3,700, 3,800 cases of autism in the developmental disability services system. All right. What's the number today, Ashley?
At least 100,000 or more?
Yeah, more than 125,000.
Wow.
All right. From, in the high 3,000s, about, more than 30 years ago, to more than 125,000 today. And the criteria have not expanded. The criteria have not changed. In fact, in 2003, we saw the criteria become more narrow. It became more difficult to enter the developmental services system in California, right? So what's really fascinating to me, and I think this is a weird sociological thing that people will be writing books about in the future, but for right now we're suffering it, is that there's a mass denial that this is a real increase, right? Even when we're limiting autism to developmental disability type autism, and we're excluding, right, the Asperger's type autism, the high functioning type autism. Even when we exclude that, we're denying that this increase in apples to apples autism is happening. And why is that happening? Number one, I think people don't understand why it's happening, right? Genetics certainly cannot explain it. And certainly we have not found any environmental factors that come close to explaining it. Certainly vaccines do not cause autism, so that's not a factor. Number two, I think people are really afraid of fueling the anti-vax narrative. And so they just choose to deny, the idea that autism is increasing. And while I'm sympathetic to that, it's also socially and scientifically irresponsible to do that. But I also think there's a third thing going on here, which is that no one wants to deal with the consequences of this, right? Nobody wants to look at this and say, oh my gosh, what are the implications for our social services system, for our long-term care system, for our housing system, to serve these permanently disabled and dependent adults.
Yeah.
We don't do that. And so it's so much easier. So why bother dealing with it? We can wait till the dam breaks. And when the dam breaks, okay, maybe we'll start, sweeping up the flood, addressing the problems, saving people from drowning. But until that dam breaks, let's go ahead and live in our little, denialville, because that's cheaper and easier. So that's my take on it. And that's what the main thing everybody has to know about autism is that we are experiencing an unprecedented situation. And the key word is unprecedented. We have not, our society, no society has had to deal with such a large population of very seriously neurodevelopmentally disabled people until now. And so as a consequence of all that, we need to reinvent our system. That's what we need to be doing. Now, everyone knows, the old saying, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism, and that autism is clinically defined as a heterogeneous disorder, everything from people who are pretty functional but have social communication impairments down to people, like my son Johnny, who can't engage in even the most basic form of self-care. Now, I want to say, I'm going to hark back to what I was just talking about before. We're looking now at 1 in 54 children in the U.S. having autism. The New Jersey data is suggesting 5% of all boys are identified as having autism. Now, these are all disabling forms of autism. These are not, people who are just quirky and different. But within this, 2% to 5% of all kids, which is a massive number that I think, people just can't even begin to grasp. There is a wide variety of presentations and functionalities. But the bottom line is all of these diagnoses are based on impairments, clinically significant impairments. None of these diagnoses are based on differences, personality traits, things that maybe, count as quirky or different. These are all disabling traits, but nevertheless, there are different severities, right, within that disabling category. So I have 2 kids with autism. Both of them have severe forms of autism. They're both nonverbal. Sophie is 14. Johnny is 21, so he's drinking age. And then, my one family, the point of that blog post, The Tale of 2 Autisms, was that even within one family and even within that severe end of the spectrum, you can have spectacularly different presentations, phenotypes. So in the case of my daughter, we have a girl who's very easygoing, really enthusiastic about doing things. I take her before COVID, I take her skiing, I take her hiking, I take her ice skating, I take her swimming, I take her to vacations. We go to Hawaii, we play in the waves, we go on little mini field trips all the time. And it's really no muss, no fuss. She's, go along, get along. She's flexible, adaptable. She's nonverbal, and she doesn't have, I would say she doesn't really have, any analytical ability, shall I say. But, she can sit at a restaurant for an hour. She can go for a walk for an hour. I don't have to panic every moment that she's going to do something destructive or disruptive. Now, my son, on the other hand, is extremely challenging, extremely difficult. He has severe behaviors 24/7. And sometimes even when he sleeps. So it really is 24/7. So he is prone to destroying property, whether it means, ripping up his mattress, or chewing on furniture, or shredding his bed sheets, or, tearing down, something in the house, to, having vocalizations, or like, kind of singing to himself, but in a way that's very disruptive to other people. To things that are kind of self-injurious, right? He's kind of covered in scratches or scratching himself. And also, of course, fortunately, it's not often, but aggression. Not aggression to strangers. He's never hurt. Listen, if my neighbors are listening to this, don't worry about Johnny. He's never hurt a stranger in his whole life. He'll kiss you before he hurts you. He's infamous for running up to strangers and kissing them and hugging them. But, but to his caregivers. So he can be aggressive with his caregivers one-to-one. And that has been a concern. So you have these kids who are completely different, and their needs are completely different, just within this one part of the spectrum. And so you could imagine, if you go to moderate autism, mild autism, Asperger's, you're talking about some people who can be completely included in everyday activities at all times, to people who really can't be included in ordinary community activities because they pose a risk to themselves or to others or to property, or they might be disruptive because of vocalizations or something like that. So, the approach I have always had with autism is you have to look at the person and not the label. The person is going to tell you what's appropriate, not the label. The label is going to tell you Jack. It's going to tell you Jack. And that's true with anybody, with a disability. My personal philosophy is very much a person-centered philosophy. When somebody who's a, self-advocate, or, I have many friends with high-functioning autism, and when they tell me, I want to live in an apartment and I want to do yada-da, I'm like, good, yes, absolutely, go for it. In fact, my business is providing housing to adults with developmental disabilities. I provide community-based housing so that people with developmental disabilities, mostly autism, but not just autism, can live in the community and access, whatever they want in their community. I'm a big champion of that, but I'm no fool. And I know from experience that a lot of these people cannot take advantage of this model. This model is imprisonment for them. It's torture for them. I will tell you, torture, because you have to keep them quiet. You have to keep them behaving. You have to keep them from eloping from the house. You have to keep them da-da-da-da. And so you're constantly, after them to stop being themselves. Mm-hmm. And there are people who can only be themselves and only be safe in an environment specifically designed for their needs. It's a cruel joke for, the ACLU or for any other advocacy organization to take a sort of blanket approach to, what's best for people with developmental disabilities, because it's such a jaw-droppingly broad category and group of people.
So we see many high-functioning self-advocates. They're very educated, very articulate, trying to represent people like Sophie and Johnny. And what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's invalid. I mean, it has no integrity. It's invalid. It's the people who should speak for the Sophies and Johnnies of the world are the people who know them best and love them best and care for them. Somebody who doesn't know my children but has an ideologically driven agenda has no business advocating for my kids. Now, here I am. I'm for sure for Sophie, 100%, advocate. I include her in everything, right? So I have no desire to imprison my children, right, in some controlled institution. Like, that's an insane idea. But at the same time, we have to acknowledge that kids like Johnny need, a highly structured environment and a highly protected environment. So, it's frustrating to have other people speak over you. I think somebody online said it's a lot like voter suppression. Why are you suppressing our vote? Why are you telling us we can't have a say, right, in these people's lives, in our loved ones' lives? It's preposterous. I mean, it's ludicrous, and I really don't have time for it anymore, but it keeps on popping up amazingly. So one thing that National Council on Severe Autism aims to do is to give the voice back to the family back to the parents, back to the people who know and love these people the best.
How about the policymakers?
Okay, well, let's talk about policy for a second, and let's just start by acknowledging that there is no autism policy in America.
Yeah.
Really isn't. We have no policy, especially with regards to adults. We have, I would say, some policy with regards to children because we have the IDEA that governs the right to free and appropriate public education. We also have some insurance mandates that apply primarily to children. But when it comes to adults, we have no policy nationally, and that is what we need more than anything. We do need a national autism policy. Well, as it stands, what we have is basically families fighting for crumbs from a system that was designed for other forms of disability. Right? The Medicaid system wasn't designed for a huge population of kids like ours, not at all. That was not on anybody's mind when this system was designed. SSDI wasn't really designed for, none of these systems have been. But now, guess what? The facts on the ground have changed. What we see from data from California is that within at least 5 to maybe 10 years at the most, half of our developmental disability population will be autism, right? 30 years ago, it was hardly on the radar. It was a tiny, tiny fraction. Now we're half, right? But we haven't updated our systems to account for this dramatic change. So what do we need to do in terms of policy? Well, I, as you know, at the Together for Choice conference 2 years ago, I gave a talk about what I call essential care nonprofits. I think this is I think we have to do a lot of things, but I think this is one very fundamental, simple, common sense change that we need, is we need to empower a new form of nonprofit entity designed specifically to provide ongoing care to adults who can't care for themselves. Remember, we didn't have this population before. And the other thing I want to mention is that in prior decades, with respect to developmental disabilities, the children used to predecease their parents, right? People with Down syndrome predecease their parents. People with CP, with epilepsy, more often than not, they wouldn't live to old age. We now have a population that will outlive their parents. So we didn't have a robust system, right, created to provide lifespan care for the severely disabled. We just didn't. We didn't need it. Well, guess what, people? Now we do. And I think that probably the easiest way to do this is through some form of nonprofit entity that is highly favored. And we call it I call it the essential care nonprofit. And it's different from your 501c3, but I don't know if we want to get into the details of this concept right now, because it would take a long time. I do think we need to create nonprofit entities that are mission driven and have a funding stream specifically for them, and also empower families to fund these in a kind of public-private partnership approach. So I think that that's one important thing. Another important thing that I think we need to do is just in terms of basic care for autism families. I think every state needs to create what I call mobile autism support teams, or MASTs, MASTs. And the mobile autism support team would be there on call to help autism families in crisis. Because what we're seeing at National Council on Severe Autism is family after family after family after family. We're talking hundreds, thousands of families experiencing crisis and just not getting support that they desperately, desperately need, right? They have to fight all this red tape, and then they're on a waiting list, and then they're lost in the shuffle, and, and then somebody gets hurt, and then they go to the ER, but then nothing happens. So I would like to see more responsiveness to crisis as well.
The most frustrating part is when I hear families calling me and say, we couldn't find any solution, so we got together, put all our life savings into this project, and the government's telling me that there are too many people with disabilities living together, and therefore, it's not going to be qualified for funding. I just think
It's insane.
Why?
It's insanity. That is
Yeah.
policy insanity. It makes
And then,
no sense. There's
yeah, and then I hear people living out of motels because there's no housing.
yeah.
And everybody says, oh, home and community is great. Well, it's not great if you're stuck in a motel or if you're stuck in a place where your caregivers are not that great. Fortunately, we know many organizations that do really well and the residents are very happy, but they're scrutinized all the time because they just happen to live with other people with disabilities. What is wrong with that? They have their friends. If they're happy, why is
There's
it
nothing wrong with it. If you have a person-centered approach, right, rather than a dogmatic, bureaucratic, ideologue-driven approach, if you have a person-centered approach, the criteria is based on what's right for that person and what that person desires in terms of daily living and goals, right? So it's not up to me. It's not up to you. It's not up to anybody listening to this, this video. What somebody with a disability should do with his or her life. That should be up to that individual, and with the advice and care of those who love them. Period. End of story. To me, that's the end of the story. There's no other criteria that matters. Now, there is a concern about quality of care and about prevention of abuse, but that concern applies to every single setting, every single environment. It applies to the family home. It applies to my tenants, right, who are living in their studios and 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom apartments. It applies to people in group homes. It applies to people in ICFs. It applies across the board. So should we pay attention to quality control? Should we pay attention to prevention of abuse? Absolutely, we should. That's critical. But it's a ridiculous idea and completely data-free, by the way, to say that only some settings, right, should be subject to a higher scrutiny. Right. It's absurd. There's no data for that. The reality we see today, as you said, are parents, developers, nonprofits who see the problem because the problem is obvious, it's in front of everybody's face, and are trying desperately to come up with workable solutions that are not only responsive to the needs of the individuals, but are also financially viable, right? Mm-hmm. And, can some of these be tweaked? Can some of them be improved? Sure, why not? Yeah, everyone can. I can improve my own, my own properties, I'm sure. But, it's completely invalid to say that, because you have 8 people living there, right, it's subject to scrutiny, but you have 3 people living there, it's not. There's no basis for this. There's no rational basis. But, we're the disability advocates, and I say advocates because they're not advocates, in my opinion, right? They're detrimental to the futures of our people. But, they make up they make up fictions. They're fictions. And that is driving a disability policy agenda now that is very frightening, especially considering the absolutely gargantuan need for long-term residential solutions for this very disabled population.
And ironically, the settings that the government says is not going to be eligible for government funding is only available to rich families that can pay out of their pocket. So
I know. This drives me nuts. I mean, I say that I've given talks, Ashley, where I get up and the first thing I say is autism housing policy today is housing for rich people only.
Yeah.
That is our de facto policy today. It drives me insane. And the further we go down this restrictive route, the more real that statement will be. Yeah. Housing for rich people only. People, if you can't go out and serve, 10, 12, 20 people, guess what? That project isn't going to pencil out. There's no way. There's no way. We're talking about multiple times, of costs if you require everybody to be in their own setting with their own supports and their own, structure and their own, yard and their own play equipment and their own pool and their own swing set and their own you keep going on, their own van, their own. It's like, no. We have to, be financially responsible here. And we have to be realistic about the fact that the vast majority of these adults with autism have no money, right? Mm-hmm. The people I house have no money. They get SSI, that's it. They don't have special needs trusts. They don't have moms and dads with lots of money, to create special environments for them. The reason I can house them is Section 8 vouchers, right? Or something called a project-based Section 8, right? One or the other. That's it. That's the approach we need. We need an acknowledgement that these people can't afford to pay rent. They can't afford to pay for their services. And they need a huge amount of flexibility in terms of how to create the living environments that are best for them. I'm really troubled by this crusade to disempower parents, because at the end of the day, guess who's going to come up with the solutions here? It's not going to be government, and it's sure as hell not going to be those advocates, because the worst thing about the advocates, like whatever, Autistic Self-Advocacy Network and those kind of people, is not only do they want to defund programs for autistic adults, they do not come out with alternatives. They're not offering any viable alternatives. Listen, if someone said, hey, I want to defund XYZ, but in its place, we're going to do, ABC instead. Hey, I'm all ears. I'm all ears to hear about different ideas and concepts that might work. But instead, it's like, we're going to defund that and then nothing. I had a conversation with one of the leading disability advocates who's based in DC last year, and we were talking about his quest to defund the sheltered workshops, right? He wanted to defund all the 14C programs. And I said, well, what's going to happen to the people who can't engage in competitive employment, right? Most of the people I represent have no chance, zero chance of engaging in competitive employment. So what's going to happen after you shut down all their jobs? You know what his response was? Some people have to pay the price.
Wow.
You see, I'm sorry, not everybody's going to be served through the new policy. It was complete lack of concern for the severely disabled. I was so disgusted. I mean, someday I'm going to have to write about this and put it on our blog and name names and stuff. I'm not there yet, but I was so disgusted. I thought, you cannot deal with somebody so irrational and so ignorant. So ignorant. He wanted to benefit a portion of the disability population at the expense of the severely disabled. How could that be? It's so, I find it so unethical. It boggles my mind. It goes without saying, from my point of view, that all of these people, whether they have autism or other disabilities, deserve our full support and acceptance. That goes without saying. That, nobody has to convince me otherwise. I've always felt that way from day one. Yeah. Right? But you can fully accept somebody, right? And fully love them, fully want the best for them, fully value them as a human being, while also acknowledging their disability. Exactly. It's not a mutually exclusive question. There's no logical disconnect there, right?
Right. Right.
That's a sort of this crazy idea that you can't accept somebody unless you don't see them as disabled. Well, that's the height of ableism.
Right. Right.
You must see them as not disabled to accept them. Well, huh? Who's the ableist here? At the end of the day, if it keeps stripping away programs and supports and funding, to help people who are the most vulnerable in our society, well, that's just despicable. It's despicable.
Let's talk about something more hopeful. So what are your hopes and dreams for Sophie and Johnny?
Well, listen, I don't have any, Hollywood ending here for you as you sit there, Ashley. But I want them to be well cared for, well protected. I want them to be engaged in something in some way. I want a whole group around them who love them and keep an eye on them and make sure that they're free from any form of neglect or abuse. Yeah. And that's a tall order. I think all autism parents say we have to live forever, right? Because we know there's someone else out there who will protect our kids like we do. It's very, very, very scary to think about what lies on the other side of the increasing, fragility and infirmity, right, of the autism parent generation. So that's one of the reasons I'm into these essential care nonprofits. I think we're going to need essential care nonprofits in all communities to help serve that post-parental function.
Well, any advice or word of encouragement to other autism families?
Well, first of all, definitely follow and subscribe to us on National Council on Severe Autism, because hopefully, before too long, we'll be doing some interesting advocacy work. Also, I would say this, I think we have a very false conception right now driving autism therapy and intervention, which is that early intervention is what matters. My experience has been, and in fact, my reading of the research has been, that early intervention hardly matters at all. And what really matters is we need to shift our focus from an early intervention mindset to a long-term care, lifespan mindset. That is I think that's the most fundamental thing we have to do as an autism community, is get realistic about the fact that early intervention really doesn't help very many people at all. It's very expensive, it's very stressful, very time consuming, and you're still left with somebody who needs lifespan care. We need to put more money, more focus, more effort into what happens after age 21.
Well, thank you, Jill. Hope you can come back and continue this conversation. But for now, please stay safe and see you next time.
Thanks, Ashley. Love talking to you.